When truth is buried, the silence is demanded. We stand at our freedom's edge.
And this is our Freedom's Edge. Welcome to our Freedom's Edge, episode 10. Truth moves through our living. This episode is the final piece of the trilogy. In episode 8, Blind by Design, we talked about how blindness is created. Not always by accident, not always because people are stupid, but because people can be overwhelmed, distracted, trained not to trust what they're seeing. Episode 8 was about how people are taught not to see. Then in episode 9, the weight of seeing, we talked about what happens when that blindness starts to break and we begin to see. The weight that comes when you finally stop looking away. The weight that comes when you can no longer pretend you don't know what you know. The weight that comes when truth finally reaches your eyes. Episode 9 was about the burden of seeing clearly. Those 2 episodes were the easy part. Now comes the hard part. What do we do after we see? First, we ask how blindness is designed. Then we ask what it costs to see. Now we ask what truth requires. Once we can no longer look away. That's what this episode is about. Not truth is something we post and walk away from. Not truth is something we privately agree with while publicly staying silent. But truth as something that changes how we live. Truth as something that reaches our voices, our choices, our courage, our relationships, our votes, our daily living. Because truth isn't finished with us when we finally see it. This is where the real work begins. And seeing truth is the first step. But seeing is not enough. Seeing matters. I don't want to minimize that in any way, shape, or form. It matters when people finally recognize they've been lied to. It matters when people finally understand that fear has been used to control them. It matters when people finally see racism that was explained away as tradition. It matters when people finally see misogyny that was excused as humor. It matters when people finally see that inhumanity was marketed as strength. It matters when people finally understand that democracy does not collapse in one dramatic moment. So yes, seeing matters. But seeing is not enough. A person can see brutality and still stay quiet. A person can see racism and still avoid the conversation. A person can see women being disrespected and still laugh along. A person can see immigrants being dehumanized and still say, well, I don't want to get into that. That's political. A person can see democracy being threatened and still decide that comfort matters more than courage. And that's part of the problem. Seeing truth may change what we know, but letting truth move through our living changes who we become. And awareness without movement is just another type of silence. Once you see clearly, silence becomes a decision. Before we see, we may be confused. Before we see, we may not understand. Before we see, we might not know what was being hidden from us. But after we see, after we know, after the truth has reached us, silence is no longer innocent. It is a choice. And the questions become, what are we choosing? Are we choosing comfort? Are we choosing approval? Are we choosing to avoid conflict? Or are we choosing conscience? And that choice is where this episode lives. Not in the seeing, but in what comes after. And often what comes after is the temptation to look away. There is comfort in looking away, and comfort is powerful. That's why it works so well. Comfort tells us to stay quiet at the dinner table. Comfort tells us not to challenge the racist joke. Comfort tells us not to correct the lie because we don't want to start an argument. Comfort tells us that, baby, this isn't our fight. And one of the easiest ways we protect that comfort is by calling moral issues politics. We say, I don't want to get political. I don't want to have any type of politics discussed at the dinner table. And what we're really saying when we say that, what we're saying is, I don't want to deal with anything that will cost me. And there's part of the problem. For the people targeted, it was never just politics. For the immigrant child afraid their family will be torn apart, it's not just politics. For the woman whose rights are being debated by people who will never live in her body, it is not just politics. For the Black family watching racism get repackaged and defended, it is not just politics. For the poor child going hungry while politicians perform acts of self-righteousness, it is not just politics. For the gay or trans person watching their existence become a campaign weapon, it is not just politics. It is life. It is safety. It is dignity. It is survival. So remember, when someone says, I don't want to have a political discussion, I don't want to talk politics, they really mean, I do not want this to cost me anything. I do not want to lose comfort. I do not want to lose approval. I don't want to disturb the room. I understand that temptation. I really do. I understand wanting peace. I understand wanting one quiet meal. I understand being tired of outrage. I understand not wanting every conversation to turn into a battle. But peace built on silence is not real peace. It's just quiet. And there's a difference. A room can be quiet because everyone's safe, or a room can be quiet because everyone knows the truth isn't welcome there. This is not peace. That is nothing but fear with manners. And sooner or later, truth asks more of us than silence. Truth doesn't just ask to be noticed. Truth asks to be lived. And that means we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions. Am I protecting peace, or am I protecting denial? Am I avoiding conflict, or am I avoiding conscience? Am I staying neutral, or am I staying comfortable? Am I keeping the peace, or am I helping a lie survive? Those questions, they are not easy questions, but they are essential questions. Because comfort can become a cage. And if we're not careful, we can spend our lives calling that cage wisdom. One of the most dangerous ways that cage survives is through silence. Silence gives permission. Silence gives cover. Silence tells the loudest person in the room that no one will challenge them. That's how injustice grows. Not only because cruel people speak, but because too many decent people decide the cost of speaking is too high. That's how racism survives in polite rooms. That's how misogyny gets laughed off. That's how lies spread through families, churches, communities, social media feeds. That's how bigotry learns where it's safe. It listens where silence. It looks where lowered eyes. It waits to see who will let it pass. And every time it passes without challenge, it gets bolder. That is why truth changes what we tolerate. When truth moves through our living, we stop calling cruelty just politics. We stop calling hatred just an opinion. We stop calling cowardice keeping the peace. We stop calling fear wisdom. That doesn't mean we become reckless. That doesn't mean we scream at everyone. It doesn't mean we stop listening. It doesn't mean every moment has to become a fight. But it does mean we stop making inhumanity comfortable. It means we stop helping harm hide behind polite language. It means we stop pretending that dehumanizing people is simply another viewpoint. It means we stop treating attacks on democracy as background noise. It means we stop giving lies a place to sit unchallenged. Now, I know this can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes discomfort is conscience waking up. Sometimes discomfort is the feeling of truth asking for room. Sometimes discomfort is the price of becoming the person we say we want to be. You understand, this is not just theory for me. This is not something I'm saying from a safe distance. This is part of my own story. Because one of the ways truth moved through my living is this podcast. I didn't start our Freedom's Edge because I wanted a platform. I didn't start this podcast because I thought the world needed another loud voice with opinions and a microphone. I did not start it because I thought people needed one more person telling them how to live better lives. I started this podcast because I had seen enough. I started it because silence can become impossible. I had lived long enough, watched long enough, listened long enough, hurt long enough, and loved my country long enough to know that silence was no longer something my conscience could carry. I have seen the treatment of migrant workers. I have seen the face of raw racism. I have witnessed violence, disrespect, and contempt toward women. And I am a survivor of violence against women. I have seen hatred aimed at people simply because of whom they love. I have seen intolerance wrapped around race, creed, color, religion, gender, and identity. I have watched people use faith as a weapon instead of a bridge. I have watched the nation I love drift toward moral bankruptcy while people go hungry. Immigrants are judged and dehumanized. Transgender people are mocked, threatened, and killed. And then, under this current political climate, my vision became painfully clear. It's not just that hate existed. Hate has always existed. It's that hate is being promoted. Human indecency is being rewarded. Violence is being excused. White superiority being normalized. And domination being dressed up as strength. I had seen too much. I could no longer be quiet. My conscience would not allow me to turn away one more day. I needed to speak. I needed to give voice. I needed to let good people know they were not alone. That is why I started our Freedom's Edge. And that's why I continue. Because somewhere out there, someone else is seeing it too. Someone else is carrying the weight. Someone else is wondering if they're the only one who still feels grief, anger, conscience, and love for this country all at the same time. And I want them to know you are not crazy. You are not alone. You are not weak because this really hurts. You are awake. And once truth wakes us, it asks us to live differently. For me, this podcast became one way I allowed truth to set me free. Not free from fear, not free from grief, not free from anger, but free from silence, free from pretending, free from looking away, free to speak, free to stand, free to let truth move through my living. And to do this, truth has to become practice. Truth cannot stay trapped in our minds. Private truth is not enough in a public crisis. Private truth does not interrupt public lies. Private truth does not protect the targeted. Private truth does not defend democracy. Truth has to become practice. It has to show up in what we say, what we refuse to repeat, what we refuse to laugh at, what we challenge, what we vote for, what we defend, what we teach our children and grandchildren, what we allow in our homes, our churches, our schools, our communities, our conversations. This does not mean everybody has to run out and start a podcast. It doesn't mean everyone has to march in the streets. It doesn't mean everyone has to be loud in the same way at the same time. But it does mean something has to change. Maybe truth moves through your living when you correct a lie. Maybe it moves when you tell someone that is not funny. Maybe it moves when you protect someone being targeted. Maybe it moves when you vote with the vulnerable in mind. Maybe it moves when you stop letting fear make your decisions. Democracy is not saved by people who merely see the danger. It is saved by people who move after seeing it. And that movement doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be real. The truth doesn't need us to be flawless. It needs us to stop using our flaws as a hiding place. Perfection can sound noble. It can sound careful. It can sound responsible. But sometimes it's just delay wearing respectable clothes. People will say, I don't know enough. I might say it wrong. Someone might challenge me. I might make a mistake. I understand that fear. I understand fear as much as the next person. But if we wait until we are perfect, we will never move. And the people doing harm are not waiting for perfect weather conditions. They're moving now. They're organizing now. They're lying now. They are attacking rights now. They are normalizing inhumanity now. So we don't have the luxury of waiting until we feel fully ready. We can be humble and still speak. We can be imperfect and still act. We can be afraid and still refuse to disappear. We can say, I may not have every word right, but I know this is wrong. I may not have every answer, but I know cruelty is not leadership. I may not know everything, but I know democracy cannot survive on lies. I may be afraid, but I am not willing to let fear make my decisions. This is courage, not the absence of fear, but pure courage. Sometimes courage is what truth becomes when it finally reaches your voice. So here is my challenge for this episode. It's not a speech from a mountaintop, not a major performance, no grand gesture, just one choice. Let truth move through one choice this week. Correct one line instead of scrolling past it. Refuse to laugh at something hateful. Speak up when someone dresses hatred as common sense. Share something honest instead of something easy. Check on someone who feels alone. Vote like truth matters. Speak like people are listening. Live like conscience is not optional. Just one choice, one moment where truth does not stay trapped in your head. One moment where it reaches your voice, your hands, your courage, your living. Because change does not always begin with thunder. Sometimes it begins with one person in one room making one honest choice. You see, the people who benefit from our blindness know how to design confusion. The people who profit from denial know how to make it comfortable. The people who depend on lies know how to make them loud. The people who need bigotry, apathy, cruelty to hold power know how to make it look normal. But once we see we are no longer where we were, and once truth begins to move through us, we are no longer who we were. Truth changes what we tolerate. Truth changes what we excuse. Truth changes what we call normal. Truth changes what we are willing to risk. And maybe that is what those who depend on our silence fear most. Not just that we will see, but that seeing will move us. That truth will find its way into our voices, our choices, our courage, our communities, our living. So let truth move. Let it disturb what needs disturbing. Let it strengthen what needs strengthening. Let it wake what has been sleeping inside of us. Let it move through us. Let truth move through our living. This is our freedom's edge, where courage meets conscience. Stay awake, stay vigilant, stay loud, stay free, and stay on the edge with me.
When truth is buried, the silence is demanded. we stand at our freedom's edge.